Welcome to episode number 24. I am your host, Sebastian ENGSTROM, and today Doug Fournier joins us. He is a captain at a fire department in Northern California. He is one genuine, humble, and kind man. We go into his journey of being a firefighter for over 20 years, what the profession is like, and the learnings and leadership. Enjoy. Doug, I've been reflecting since we last spoke, and I am incredibly grateful to have you here. First and foremost, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And Doug is, well, before I jump into it, Doug, you are a very unique individual and you help a lot of people in this world. How would you describe what you do and who you are in your own words?
I do, and who I am. I'm a Californian. I don't really fit in California. I don't fit the mold. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm a neighbor. I'm a firefighter. I'm a captain at work. A former neighbor of yours. I in being married, I've learned through professionals that help us, doctors and others, and books and stuff like that. I've learned about love languages, and I've realized that my love language is acts of service. So, for those that don't know, there's gifts and physical affection and quality time and words of affirmation, and everybody likes a little bit of everything, but the way I send love is acts of service. And I think that is why I like my job, because it's kind of like helping neighbors, but with a moment's notice in the neighborhood that I work in for big, complex, emergent projects. Different than a neighbor needs help with their fence, which I would love to help a neighbor with their fence project, but a fire or an emergency medical call in the neighborhood where I work is really no different, other than the urgency.
Yeah.
So you may say, hey, I'll come help you next week on your fence, but when people call 911, they need help right now.
Yeah.
But I really see it as kind of the same thing.
And that is how you like to receive love as well. Acts of kindness is how you like to receive love too. Sometimes you have one way, maybe it's favored to how you like to give it. But is that the way you like to receive acts of kindness?
Yeah, I would say on the receiving side, that is, and it's a disconnect in many relationships, where, I'm having to learn to care for my wife and love my kids in the way that they receive, not just the way that I want to give.
Yes. Absolutely.
A reasonable introduction.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think this is a very intriguing way of starting it off. You gave me a very meaningful gift, How to Date Your Wife. I believe that is the title. Very, very similar to it. Yes, and it reminds. I've started it. Yeah, I started on the plane. I haven't finished it yet, and but it's a constant reminder. It's if your marriage or your relationship will grow, and if you don't grow with it, then it won't work out. And it's an amazing reminder. Is you gotta put your best foot forward. You gotta treat it like you're dating your wife, and not get complacent, and not get comfortable, and not do what you've always done. And that is, I fall into that. So that's it's a practical book of tools for sure. That really was an amazing reminder, and that it's so intriguing that you are so connected with who you are and how you answer that question, because as you are a captain of a fire station, um, what I've come across, very many masculine men, they would not necessarily go into explaining who they are like you just did, or talk about love languages, or talk about their emotions at all. So I think that's I mean, it makes for a very intriguing just human being that you are, Doug, and how you go about it, and that you have and you do lead with your heart. And that leads me into the second question. How do you, with the firefighters that you've come across, do you feel like that is the most common approach? That is why many firefighters join that profession?
I think so. It's definitely a task-oriented career, hands-on, tactile, manipulative, people who have been in the military, people who have worked in the trades, like construction, any type of trades as far as plumbing, electrical, or digging ditches or anything like that, or people who have been in the military, or people who have grown up with family members, working on cars or working on stuff with their dad or maybe their mom, or that's how I was. And that's how I see those types of people grow into the job a little bit easier. Some people don't grow up with that, and I've brought in things from home to help teach firefighters that never worked on any electrical projects or plumbing projects with their father like I did one, or their mom or their siblings or whatever. So it's not a must-have, but it's nice because we deal with leaking hot water heaters or broken sprinklers, and one of the things that people don't understand about the fire department, and in many communities like the one I work in, and many around the Bay Area in California, and probably I can't speak for the whole country or the rest of the world, but there's a lot of 911 calls that are benign. There are people that just don't have the physical strength to turn something off, or pick up their spouse and get them back on the toilet or back into bed or in and out of the car. So there's a drop on my drop down menu for what we do. It's just manpower. It's human power. It's because we got, of course, men and women, but it's just physical help that people need sometimes. And yes, we go to fires. Yes, we're doing CPR on people. We see tragic things. Additionally, we help just do very basic things and help people. And there's two sides to the fire service that I would explain that a lot of people don't quite understand. And that is, one is the responding and being on a call or on emergency. The other is life back at the fire station, which also includes training and things like that. But for anybody who's ever had a roommate or not lived completely by themselves, an important quality for a firefighter is to be a good roommate.
Yeah.
Know what that means. It's dishes, it's the bathroom routine, it's making a mess or cleaning up after yourselves, or taking turns cooking, or just being an unselfish person. Those types of people thrive in the firehouse. But being a selfish person, or just making a mess, or just being a quote unquote bad roommate, because we're around each other for so many hours, daytime and nighttime, and multiple days in a row, or out on a strike team, at a campaign fire out hundreds of miles from home, and just being in the fire engine together, stuck with each other and with whatever the conversation is. It just helps to be not all about yourself, which just making people kind of miserable.
So at one point, my goal was to become a firefighter, and the blood and guts more so the guts. Seeing open, significant open wounds was what made me steer away from it. And but it was part having a big heart and wanting to help people. That was a big driver. But it was also the, hey, what do girls want at that point? Like, yeah, what do that? I mean, you're seen as a hero. It's like, right. It comes with a, for me, it came with ego that I just want to be recognized. How common do you feel like that is with people who step into the profession?
I think that there is some of that.
Mm.
There is ego. That's definitely a typically a type A personality profession. To me, I mean, I'm older now. I'm not the guy on the fire engine that gets a lot of attention from the girls. You know, maybe I got a little bit of that. You know, private fire. That everybody likes that.
Yeah.
It's mainly, for me, it's mainly the kids.
Mm.
Kids, the same kids that are fascinated with the fire engine are the same kids that are fascinated, and sometimes even more so, with the garbage truck and the garbage.
Sure.
So I don't know if it's just the boys, you know, that you know, that love. And I used to remember waving and running outside and waving at the garbage man, or going to the fire station when I was a kid. And I don't know. I think kids like trucks and big, you know, and that's a common toy for kids, trucks and cars and that kind of thing. So there's a the whole hero thing. I think it's an overstatement, truly, and it's unfair. I think it, you know, the people, the unsung heroes, I think, in our culture, are teachers.
Yep.
And coaches. Because of now firefighters can influence kids, and we do neat stuff like stop, drop, and roll, and teaching kids to call 911, and we visit them in their schools, but we're just there for a tiny moment of time. I come from a family of almost all teachers, and you know, they're just predominantly underpaid, and you know, it's just a tough job, but there's a lot of reward to it, I think. But I think the opportunity to influence society or culture is probably, I think it's just understated and undervalued. When a fire department has a moment to touch a family, or to touch, or to be in, not touch is the wrong word, but have a short experience. It's usually, it might be once in their life that someone calls 911.
Sure.
So though we have to be brave and use the tools that we have and protect our lungs and breathe our clean air that we bring in our tanks, and go into smoky buildings and help people who have been burned, or get them in the ambulance and stuff like that. I mean, that takes training, and it takes skill and practice and knowledge and some bravery. But I mean, it's those things are true and authentic. But you know, I don't know. I just think the hero stuff is the word, that word, or it can be, I think, overused. And I mean, that's the job I signed up for.
Sure. Yeah.
So why should it be a super big deal when I do what I signed up for? And I don't want to downplay it, because it's important and it's good, but I want to balance it. I don't want to overstate it. And so to answer your question, how many people do people get in the fire department for the attention or for the heroic stuff? I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe some do. For me, it was more about a work-life balance, where you could work for many hours at a time and then get a
Sure.
bunch of hours off to be able to do hobbies and fun things. And that it was more about the schedule and just a steady career doing something I enjoyed, which was the advice that my parents gave me. Find something that you like to do. And
Yeah.
when I got to experience it, I enjoyed it. And so that's why it wasn't really so much about look at me with my fancy blue shirt on or my cool fire helmet and how
Sure.
awesome I am right now.
So yeah.
I think that fades.
Uh-huh.
It's not really about that.
So with the people, maybe there are some excitement going into it, and now, I mean, as you're saying, it becomes a job. At one point, it's like, this is what I signed up to do. This is my responsibility. But there's also, and that is a mindset of its own, that you just want to be steady and pace it and be very sharp stepping into any type of situation that might happen. And it could be in the flip of a switch that you get called into something, you're sleeping, or you're doing something very relaxing. All of a sudden, like, you mentioned to me before, you're cooking, all of a sudden you need to shut everything down, turn off the burners, and you're out the door. Do you practice? Is that just practice by experience that you learn? Do you just shift, or is that do you do any type of preparation, any type of exercises, mindset, even like meditation might be something? But do you do any type of how do you prepare for situations like that? Is it by doing, or is there any?
By practice.
Yeah, by practice. Yeah.
When I would be cooking a meal when I years ago, and I thought it might get ruined if we got a call, and I would kind of panic, or not, I mean, not really panic, but
Yeah.
and really would kind of blow me out. I would get upset. And now it's like, well, hey, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a meal, or we'll go order out, or usually the meal doesn't get completely ruined, but when the tones go off and the bells happen, early on in your career, my heart rate would go up, and and things would, it was a big deal. Now, after a number of years, it's just more routine. And, being a supervisor, I have to try to keep calm, cool, and collected, and make the decisions that need to be made. And we have to figure out what type of call we're going to, figure out where it is, and if we can't hear it, or we don't, so there's multiple ways that they give us the information. The computer, tablet in the fire engine, and information can come up on your phone, and it comes over the air. So we got to make sure that the driver knows where we're going, and that we're we might be strategizing on the way to the call, depending on the information that we have. We get updates. The 911 call taker will verbally or type in information that we can read on the iPad, so we know the type of medical we're going to, so trauma versus medical. So we have a trauma bag that has all the, to deal with the blood and guts, as you referred to earlier. When you get someone who's having an asthma attack, then if we know a little bit of information, then we bring one bag, and then we don't need to bring the trauma bag in, because there's no sense in, bringing all the bandages and tape and gauze and all that when they need oxygen and albuterol or whatever else we're going to be treating them for.
Yeah. How, speaking of that, the collaboration with the police and ambulance, how does that work? And sometimes you've seen it depicted in movies or shows that there's sometimes tension. What is the reality from your perspective?
I would encourage you and everybody to just not think that anything you see on TV or the movies is in any way realistic.
I hope so.
It's a soap opera. Just like trying to say that like Glee, is actually like school, or
right.
like, these shows are entertainment, but there are soap operas just like anything else, whether it's around the police or fire department. We have a great working relationship with the police agency and the sheriff's agency that we work with. My area is split nearly half and half between sheriff's office and the city police, and there's a private ambulance contractor, and generally everybody gets along great. We kind of all go to the calls. Sometimes the cops are there first, usually for a medical aid call based on proximity and numbers. Typically the fire engine gets there first, the ambulance is second, and the police may or may not come depending on the nature of the call. But we get along great. I have friends in the PD, I have friends in the sheriff's office, I have friends on the ambulance, and mostly acquaintances, and you just kind of recognize people, and they come and go on the ambulance, come and go. Some old timers are hanging around, seems like a lot of new people, and then the cops work in different areas or float in and out of the jail. So I would say, I have heard of times where city agencies would have heartburn between each other, whether it's, who knows, contract negotiations or whatever else. But generally where I work, it's great. And we're all there for the same purpose. And it would be silly for us to be, in a tiff in the middle of somebody's front yard.
So you mentioned a very interesting thing is that quite a few people from the military join the fire department, and I can see that happening too for more so the police department, because you're here, right? You're there to serve, you're there to lead, and you're there to help others. What would you say? Do you feel like there's a different person that would go into becoming a firefighter versus a police officer, even versus a paramedic? Or is it they're all cut from the same cloth? It is more just slight preference.
I would say there's a lot of crossover and similarities, with the main difference being when you're in a patrol car, the majority of police officers or sheriff's deputies, they do work in teams, but most of the time they're by themselves. And I would say, for my personality, that would be something that I would not prefer. Some people do prefer that. Some people like being by themselves or on patrol and nobody to bother them, and maybe they're, people are different. We're all unique. So some people, I think, and I've talked to some cops about this, they like that. They, for whatever reason, they like doing their own thing for multiple hours of a shift. Now, of course, when there's calls, they generally work in teams. They don't, cops almost don't do anything completely solo. They support each other, and I don't know exactly how it works, but typically when they pull somebody over, maybe basic traffic stuff, they're by themselves. But so the difference would be, you end up with a lot of athletes also, I think, in those in all those different groups. So in the ambulance, you're stuck with your partner and driving around the ambulance quite a bit. There's a lot of driving that may not be responding to emergencies, where you're together moving around as they cover different parts of any given county. And then at the fire department, we're stuck in the firehouse together, or stuck in the fire engine together almost all the time, which goes back to the whole roommate thing. So I think it's the metaphor would be roommates. The other metaphor would be team members. We're all on the same team. We got kind of one coach or one leader or one captain, and then we all are moving towards a common goal. We have to practice our plays, whether it's football, basketball, or any team, where we pretend there's fire. We pretend you have these mannequins with the fake baby and the fake head, and they practice using our tools and doing doing the things that we need to do, so that we're ready to go. Because the calls we go on don't happen every day. The fires aren't every day. The medical aids happen every day, but the childbirth calls or the using some of our specialty tools for unique situations, they don't happen. We have infrequent skills training in EMS for the medical stuff, and we do like childbirth and different pacing stuff with the heart monitor and just things that we don't do very often, so that all the paramedics and then the helper EMTs are all ready to go, when we get those infrequent.
With you being in a leadership position, I mean, even there are leadership capabilities that I can even see as everyone will practice at one point or another. What would you say that the fire department has taught you about leadership?
It's definitely taught me selflessness. It's definitely taught me humility. It's the captain is the player coach. I tell the firefighters that communication is vertical on an emergency and horizontal around the station. So we can, I'm not about giving orders of who does what, when, and where, and why at the station. It's collaborative. We are all there together, and we can, hey, well, so and so, Joe will cook, and and I'll cook tomorrow, and Sebastian, you can cook next to her, it's collaborative. But once we get to an emergency, it's not there's not enough time for everybody to give their input. So I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you are. I'm good.
What has it taught me? And being an officer, it's definitely taught me to lead by example. I can't expect the firefighters to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. So I try to participate with, and be a good roommate with the house duties, or taking care of the engine, or, picking up trash around the station, or just kind of whatever chores. And I've had to learn project management. I've had to, we have different programs where we serve the community in different ways, toy drive and the pancake breakfast on the 4th of July, or the junior fire academy, where young students come in and like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, and they learn about the fire service. They come in for like a week and during the day, and then we have our cadet program, which is college age students that are aspiring firefighters, and they can get time in the firehouse. And I've been involved in one way or another all in the last 20 something years. I've been involved in all these programs and leading several of them at different times. And it's project management, like any other job, where you have a budget, and you have a goal, and you're 6 months out, and what does success look like, and getting your team together, and then evaluating what can we do better next time. And so that's something that I never really had any idea about. I was new in the fire service, but it's project management. And but there's a lot that happens. I think a lot of people don't really understand what we do. Excuse me. It's like, what do you guys do the whole time when you're not at fires? You just work out and sleep, and we do try to put an hour of fitness in a day, which is good for us mentally, good for the community. If we are in good shape and fit, then we will be able to serve the community better. If we are rested, and I try to maintain a sustainable pace, not overwork myself or the guys. But there's projects, there's paperwork, there's computer work. It sometimes feels endless. There's building inspections where we physically inspect businesses and apartments to make sure that There's no code violations. Make sure that they have their fire extinguishers, and make sure the laundry rooms are tidy and appropriate, and there's no obvious holes like in the carports, where the fire
Mm-hmm.
got catch on fire, the fire could extend up into the apartment, and um, people using extension cords, those orange cords when they're supposed to have permanent wiring. So those are common violations. The most common violation is no extinguisher or an out of date extinguisher. So all this to say that the business of the fire service is not well understood, I think, by the general public, but it's I'll promise you we're not sitting around watching TV all day. Sometimes we try to catch the game like on the weekends to get our chores done quick, and catch a look like a Niner game or a Giants game, and playoffs or whatever if we can. But then of course if we get calls, then we're out the door, and we hit the DVR, and but in the evenings time, we have time to ourselves or whatever, and then we try to sleep. But sleep at the firehouse is not like sleep at home.
Please share.
In no way is it the same. And imagine somebody sitting at the foot of your bed with a whistle saying, well, I might blow this or I might not at some point, and tell me how you think you're going to sleep that night. So I really come home pretty exhausted, and I think I slept probably 11 hours after work, 3 days. And sometimes when you get a call in the middle of the night, I open my eyes and I put my socks on, and I think to myself, I'm not sure if I was actually asleep. I think I was asleep, but kind of not. Like I didn't really feel like I had to completely wake up.
I thought that would fade after so many years, but I guess it still sits. It's still there.
For me, because I think as I get older, I just don't sleep as good as I used to, and I think the responsibility and just some added work stress.
Yeah.
And for other things we don't necessarily have to get into. I used to sleep better in the firehouse when I was younger and had less responsibility.
Sure. Yeah.
So. You'd think you'd get better at it, but it's subconscious, and I'm not sure that I don't know how to train for that. Maybe more meditation or prayer.
Yeah, breath work. Yeah, I mean you're at it. I mean even what are you saying? Your mountain bike meditative rushes of adrenaline, and you're racing. That's processing right there, right? How you deal with everything that you're going through. Yeah. I'm excuse me, I'm rereading Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink for the third time. It's by a Navy SEAL, for those who don't know. And
I haven't got through the whole thing, but I've been through most of it.
So he jumps into leadership from multiple angles, him and the other author, Leif Babin. And what is interesting there is they take extreme ownership of everything and anything that happens. That also goes into the negative things that occur, and anything that does happen to the team, and anyone who gets hurt or even passes away. And it's this massive guilt, even from regular, you don't have to be a leader, but there are a lot of people, and I've come across them, personally met them, who can't live with themselves if they get injured and they get off the job and they can't be deployed again, and they feel like they are betraying their comrades, and they rather kill themselves instead of living with that guilt. Do you feel like a similar culture goes into the fire department as well?
I think it's the fire service and police service are considered paramilitary organizations, where they have there's a lot of similarities to the org chart, the command structure, how things are organized, the way that training is done, the way that we pre-plan our the firefight versus the battle.
Sure.
There's a lot of similarities and crossovers. There's not as many military people in the fire service as there used to be. I
Mm-hmm.
would say after World War II, from what I'm told, there was lots of, and after some of the big conflicts when we've had, when people have been drafted and lots of people were in the military, then a lot of people ended up in the fire service who were in the military. And then it became more common for people to come out of the trades, like I was talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
construction. And then now it's more like myself and like the guys that I got hired with. You guys coming in the fire department with a bachelor's degree, with their paramedic license,
Hmm.
with some education. So it's not as much military experience. But to get back to your question, there's been a bunch of publications through the international, through our labor group, our union, that has tried to bring out of the shadows the how common firefighter suicides have been. It's become more common and it's become more publicized, and they've started peer groups and training and mentoring and counseling, and kind of like heal your own, I think was one of the slogans or one of the taglines. And some guys in our department have signed up to be, basically if you're having these, there's a little bit of training so that if you're having some of these thoughts, you can reach out to one of these people if you felt comfortable. So it's sad, very sad to say that this is more common maybe than it used to be. Regardless of frequency, it's tragic. It is the guys having back injuries or other joint injuries and not being able to work is common. I've experienced some injuries myself and wake up, every time I get out of bed, I'm reminded of those injuries. I'm still able to work, but it's, I have to work through some of the bulging discs and some of the pain. And if I can only speak for myself really, but if I was to become injured and couldn't work anymore, certainly if it was years ago and my career was cut really short, I think it would be depressing. I would probably, I'd have to look for something else to do. I don't know what that would be. I don't think I could teach, not with the way kids are these days. That's a whole nother subject, but there's a crossover. Yes.
Yeah.
But, the machismo, the tough guy, the type A, most people don't talk about it.
Right.
They, I when it comes to the average firefighter, I'm probably a little more sensitive, wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit more, blabbermouth a little bit more than average. I would say that I'm not the average Joe firefighter. Me, we've talked. I've shared stuff with you even when we didn't even know each other that well. But I could tell that you're the type of person that is kind and you're a great listener, and we just we hit it off well, and it's easy to see, which is why I wanted to do this and be a part of your project. And
thank you.
It's hard to say. I can't speak for other people, but that's definitely there's definitely a crossover. There's some similarities between that military stuff and with the tragedy and the ownership. And
a follow-up to that, do you feel like when firefighters struggle, if there's something that they're going through, is that because of guilt of not being able to be there in a situation where they beat themselves up for, I could have saved that person, I could have done this different? Is that where majority of the pain and suffering comes from on the job, or is there other scenarios? Because in previous conversations you've hinted towards it's sometimes it's the difficult part is being sometimes always together constantly.
I don't I don't know that I don't think that it's guys beating themselves up. Like if I was there, then I would have, or if we were there quicker,
Mm-hmm.
or if we, got the call sooner, if we could have known about it, then we could have helped. That's true. The position I take is that, these tragedies happen, and the notification with cell phones and everything. I mean, that typically things happen pretty quick, and so it's not like the old days where it would be some kind of archaic, system of communication. We get the notifications quickly, and we get out the door quickly, and there's fire stations strategically placed, in fairly close proximity so that we
Yep.
can help people. I don't know. I just think these things happen. Fires happen, and tragedy, vehicle accidents happen, and I think it's a neat opportunity for us to be able to come and make a difference. Now,
Sure.
that being said, there's some things we can't do anything about.
Mm.
Lots of times, there's certain things that paramedics, fire department, or ambulance paramedics can help a lot, but many things is they need to get to surgery when there's a bad crash or a burn or a bad like trauma, physical injury. They don't need a lot of help from the paramedics, EMTs in the field, other than like the obvious, like controlling bleeding
Sure.
and giving oxygen. What they need is they need to be on the surgery table right now.
Mm.
They call it the golden hour, from a crash to being on the surgical table.
Mm.
So what we do is we call it load and go. Load and go. Get them in the ambulance, get them going, and not try to fix what's happening per se in the house or on the street or on the freeway, with the obvious exceptions of the bleeding and giving some oxygen and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So some things you just can't do anything about. There's only so much we can help.
Are there any particularly challenging calls that you've had that come to mind that you could share with us, and what was that like?
Yeah, I would say that one of the most challenging and one of the most common things that we have to deal with is dealing with people who are suffering from mental illness. And you see it in the homeless population, which is becoming more and more common around the Bay Area. And, the people living in RVs, people living in tents, people living on the street, and there's a lot of mental illness and then substance abuse that blends in to that whole situation. Not all people, but it's very common. So dealing with people who have anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, whatever, is confusing, is frustrating. They're screaming at us. We have a guy that lives in a group home that has this. I was reading his paperwork. It's like an explosive disorder. He basically just screams. He's a big dude, and he just is screaming, "I want a cigarette! I want a cigarette!" That type of thing. Like, and we're like, and there's no reasoning, and it's a challenge to remain calm, to remain patient. You're trying to help people, but they're not thinking and acting rationally, and you almost feel like sometimes you want to give up, like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't appreciate us at all, we're not really helping, or this is the 5th time we've dealt with this person. And the substance abuse, it's like people just get drunk, fall out of bed, and we got to pick them back up, and we know this lady by first name, or this guy, but he's in the wheelchair again in the lobby, and the neighbors are walking by, and they're like, oh, get rid of this guy, he's making them, we don't know what demons they're dealing with. We don't know the backstory, we don't know the history, and we try to treat everybody as if they were family, but it's really challenging
Mm.
sometimes. I would
Yeah.
say that's the most challenging, most common daily
Mm.
scenario.
Mm.
Not
Daily.
the most difficult thing to deal with, but it's the most common kind of like, you know, um, frequent kind of challenge.
Sure. What is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding is when you hear back from somebody or meet someone that you have made a difference in their life.
Mm.
There's, I haven't experienced this, but I've seen pictures or like heard talk to the guys like that met or took a picture with or had over to the firehouse a person that was a baby that they helped deliver.
Oh, wow.
This kid's like a teenager, and they're
Oh,
like, and then like, hey, this is little Johnny, and he's all grown up, and it's like, or even a thank you note, handwritten thank you notes, or meeting someone to say, hey, you helped my father-in-law, my
mm.
mom, my cousin, thank you.
Mm.
So when people say thank you for your service and thumbs up and all that, that is great and that is awesome. But when you hear a story that is one person's particular situation, I mean, we had a fire at a house, and the son stopped me at the grocery store. He's like, that fire on such and such street, that was my parents' house. Thank you so much. It was a really, really one of the most challenging fires that I've ever been to. It's one of the steepest streets in our city. It was the hottest day
Mm.
almost ever.
Mm. Mm.
And the fire was in the attic. They had a particularly challenging type of roofing material, and oh man, it was
Yeah.
really tough. And he stopped me. He said, hey, thanks. That was my mom and dad's house. Seeing those people, shaking those hands, or a hug, or a picture, or even a handwritten thank you note, that makes everything, worth it.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of like my kids occasionally, being a parent, there's the battle, and there's the war, and there's the, and there's the time, there's the Sharks games, and there's the camping trips, and then there's the homework, and then trying to get them to do their, it's a battle, right?
Sure.
And then, but our kids have written us, handwritten birthday or Christmas, like, this is what I like about my life, and this is what's great, and this is thank you for blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, another year, completely worth it, basically, by a note.
Yeah.
And understanding that they appreciate it. It's just to be acknowledged. Because we run around, and lots of times people just forget, or they're so spun up in their own emergency, and I don't fault them. They just don't think to say anything. But sometimes they do, and it's really, really neat.
What is the most fun moment that you've ever experienced being a firefighter or working for the fire department?
But with ease, because I miss it so much since I've been promoted. The best thing is driving the fire engine.
Yeah.
The engines, the one that has the hose and the water, and pumping out a fire, and we have the old style ladder truck with the driver in the front and the driver in the back. Driving the front of the ladder truck, and putting the hydraulic aerial ladder up on a fire, driving the back of the ladder truck, and being the sawyer, and on doing vertical ventilation on a roof, and cutting a hole and making a chimney.
Yeah.
And it just fits my wheelhouse as a kid who grew up running a chainsaw, cutting firewood with my dad, and working on stuff, and and cooking, with my mom, and um, I mean, it's just why the job has suited me. But the most fun thing to do is to drive down the wrong side of the road when the lights are flashing on, and talking a little bit of smack maybe in our headsets on our way to a call.
Uh-huh. So,
And so I really miss driving because as a captain, I don't get to drive anymore. I sent both of my firefighters went in the ambulance for some kind of hot medical call just recently, and I said, "Oh man, cool! I get to drive the fire engine to the
uh,
hospital."
uh,
It's been a while, but I was all smiles.
yeah, yeah. So, the saddest moment being at the fire department.
Watching somebody pass away right in front of me.
Mm.
Um, Trying to help someone, and we just don't have the tools,
Yeah.
don't have it's their time to go, and we just can't do anything about it. And I've been on a couple calls where the person's alive when you get there, and when we leave, they're not alive anymore.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, seeing people grieve, having to tell a family member or a roommate. Recently, I had to tell a roommate that their roommate was dead, that had passed away.
Yeah.
And giving that news and trying to hold it together myself,
Yeah.
and them just exploding in grief
Mm.
is not fun.
Yeah.
But it's important
Mm.
to be truthful and to not be vague,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can understand what's happening
Yeah.
and they can start their grieving and healing process.
Do you feel like you carry that with you? You feel like you're able to leave it at points and just accept it, and that's been part of your job.
Yeah, I feel that mostly I can leave it. My perspective is this person, whether I worked that day or whether I didn't, or whether I worked in another department. Like there's a guy in LA who is in the same situation I'm in, but I can't, that person that died, in most cases, if we leave them there after we do CPR for 30 minutes, which is our protocol, amongst, everything else that we can do, medication and electricity and those types of things, that person was going to die regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that is driving crazy on the freeway and crashes and is hurt or killed, I mean, I can't control that either.
Mm-hmm.
I can show up and try to help, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't always end the way we want it to.
So we all drive. What is something that we should keep in mind that you've learned and seen the hard way from people crashing and sometimes even passing?
I would say that with my racing experience, and it's a timely question because my son has his permit, so I'm teaching him to drive.
Yeah.
And a couple It's a great question. It's good, and it's something that we should all be talking about, and something that me and everybody is guilty of. The things that I'm going to talk about.
Mm.
Number one problem is, especially in the modern day, with cell phones and all the gizmos in the car and everything, is being distracted.
Mm.
Please don't be a distracted driver. Please leave your cell phone down, have it maybe hands free, have a headset. If you need to do something on your phone, pull over and do it and get your directions or whatever, get everything going, get your call going, then drive. You know, people, you see people reading the paper, doing makeup, eating on their phone, on their tablet, on their screen, on a Zoom, whatever. It's distracted driving.
Mm.
Number two is people, and this is the second thing I told my son, don't drive anywhere. Don't be in a hurry. If you miss your turn, go around the block, take the next exit. Don't panic and late brake and jam into the off ramp.
Yeah.
So we just see people that are going too fast and distracted and not being patient, not having enough time to get where they're going to go, and that causes most of the problems. The other most common problem is people don't leave enough space between the car in front of them. The most common accident is in traffic, 7 in the morning, 5:30 at night, is just little fender benders because people get brake checked by the person in front of them and bump into the car in front of them.
Sure.
So leave a cushion in front of you.
Mm. Well, I think that is, I'm gonna let that sink in, and that's something that has taught me here moving to Sweden is just slow down. There is time. We all tend to think that we'll run out of time, that we just need to be in a hurry constantly, and it doesn't help many of the times. It might do it short term, but long term, the distracted driving, eating in the car. Like I used to live a very busy lifestyle, and I thought, well, in order for me to eat, I need to do this in order to hit my numbers, so forth. But it didn't make me feel better, and long term, it made me how I felt and how I was doing went downhill. So I think, I mean, that really hits home hearing it from you, and especially hearing, I mean, what you've seen people actually pass away from this. And I've had close calls myself where I'm just thanking someone higher above that, hey, I'm so grateful that nothing happened, but that was on me. So thank you for everything that you've shared today, Doug. This is it's been very impactful, very meaningful. And I'm in a very good space right now. I feel connected, and I feel elevated, and I feel incredibly grateful that you're out there leading the teams that you are, and how you're helping and making an impact in this world, and you are wearing your heart on your sleeve, and you're being not your regular machismo firefighter, but you're sharing, hey, how can a very connected human being through and through show up and help people and share
and I think that also my worldview and my spiritual view is a major factor. Something that we haven't really touched on is that the peace that I can't say that I always feel, but the purpose and peace that I have for my life is found in the God of the Bible. And my view of life and earth and heaven comes from a biblical view. And I believe in intelligent design. I believe in an afterlife. I believe that this life we have on earth is temporary, and that the afterlife, through understanding the work that Jesus Christ us access to eternal life with God in the future if we choose not to reject that. And I know that those words and some of those things can be considered controversial or messy, and there's a lot of examples out there of people who have said words like that, or said they were followers of God or Jesus Christ and done a lot of bad stuff. And And I think that, that needs to be acknowledged. But Jesus was a great example of the one perfect human. He was intentional. He communicated with people. He was loving. He was patient. He didn't get wrapped up in politics. He was the guy in the back of the wedding reception playing with the kids, and then turned water into wine. So I think that's pretty cool. And that worldview and that spiritual and heavenly minded view is the overriding mindset and belief and understanding that makes everything in my life, though it doesn't feel like it sometimes I can't say that I have this perfect peace all the time, but that's my foundation. That's what I fall back on. So that even though that all this tragedy that God and then everybody says, well, why does God let these bad things happen? Well, I think that he does so that we will look for him. Sick and dying and are in pain, and I don't understand exactly God's how he allows all this trouble in our world, but hopefully it leads us to him rather than being angry at him and away from him. And it gives me a foundation to guide in my own imperfect way, just trying to do the best I can, trying to teach the kids and try to be the best husband I can. And I blow it all the time, but it gives me the foundation to build the house on, to build the life on that makes sense to, and then allow theoretical, then it helps me to guide me through like all these things that we've been talking about. To be a leader, to be a humble servant leader, to manage, being a good roommate at the firehouse, being a good roommate at home, being a good father, being a good husband, being a good neighbor, and navigating the trauma, the blood and the guts, and the hard stuff.
Yeah. Impactful, and thank you. Reminders and gems through and through, and I think that was for me personally the biggest one. So thank you for leaving us off, and with that, and thank you for coming and joining here today, Doug.
You're welcome, buddy.
Doug is such an incredibly kind person, and I'm so thankful to have him in my life and that he was able to share his story with you today. So thank you for tuning in. And if you are just out and about, if you see a firefighter, if you see a police officer, if you see an EMT worker, please thank them. They do significant things. And as you heard, some of those things that no one really wants to do. And that is having patience in the most difficult situations where people would normally just turn their head or walk the other way. They have the patience to deal with the difficult things. And I think we have so much to thank them for, a salute them to. Thank you very much for tuning in, listening to this. And Doug, thank you, if you're listening, for joining me on this episode. And if you haven't done so far, please leave a 5-star review, hit subscribe, even leave a review. That's the good deed of the day. It takes you the shortest amount of time, 10 seconds, the most 2, maybe 3 minutes. This is significant because this helps me spread the message. And hopefully you've gained something from this. You've learned something from this, and you've healed some part of you or got inspired. So I am sending you much love, and I'm thanking you for joining here today.